Good evening and welcome to the 5th Inside Government Show for the fall 2020 semester here at KU Community College. This is a show that's broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, as well as WIN 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. As we've said over the last several weeks, due to the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic, we have changed this show a little bit since the spring, when in March we were cut off from doing shows, but we're delighted to be back in the studio. We have some new health protocols and SUNY directives that we're following. We're only doing one taping per day now on a Tuesday or Thursday, so it'll be either Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page. And we only allow one guest in the studio at a time, so it'll be interesting for the forums that we're going to have in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you about that at the end of the show. Just a reminder, these are productions that are taped by and directed and produced by the students here at the college. We've front-loaded the schedule because of COVID-19, so we started early in September and will end just after Election Day versus starting in early October and heading out in December when we finish off with Santa Claus, but we'll figure that out at some other point. Since 1790, the United States has conducted a census every 10 years, originally done to make sure that congressional and state legislative districts were uniform in population. The census now has a major impact on more than $650 billion, that's with a B, in funds distributed from Albany and downwards annually. 2020 marks the 23rd decennial census and has been plagued by controversy and challenges from the start, originally with issues such as what questions would be asked, and now it has also been impacted by COVID-19 and more importantly by the Census Bureau reversing a decision, or at least Washington reversing a decision to go to the end of October. You have until Wednesday, September 30th to fill out the census online if you have not done so at all. In any case, KU County has been trying to make sure that everyone is counted. With us tonight is freshman KU County Legislator TRICIA KERR, who is an independent, represents part of the city of Auburn, the east side of the city. She's been the legislature's liaison with the KU County Complete Count Committee, which for disclosure purposes I happen to chair, but it's tough to interview myself. The committee has been trying to coordinate an outreach in KU County. We're going to talk a little bit about that now, but to give you an idea of where we are, nationally the response rate as of yesterday was 66.2%. In New York State, it was 63.2%. In the county, it is at 60.3%. And in the city, which is doing much better than it was 3 days ago, it is up to 60.6%. But we do have holes in our reporting, especially in the city's west end, where the numbers are at 44.7%, so that's almost 16% less than the overall city number. Niles, we're at 39.6%, Sterling 46%, and then declining efforts going upwards to get to 60. Scipio, Ledyard, Cato, Springport, Conquest, Summerhill, Montezuma, and Venice are all below the county response rate. We have to do better. We have to get these numbers in, and we have less than 5 days. We have asked Legislator Kerr to help us explain why it is vital to raise our response rate and why you have to be accounted by Wednesday the 30th. Welcome.
Thanks, Guy. Good to be here.
Well, delighted to have you here. So, for those who may not know, and I'm hoping they have seen blue signs all over the city of Auburn, we'll talk about this, why do we do the census?
Well, we do the census for a couple of reasons. First of all, like you said, it's been around since the 1790s. We do this work to get a complete count of the population in our country, and that helps to determine how funding is directed to communities at the state and local level, and how representation is carved out for those communities in Congress and at the state level.
So it's mainly about the money and how you're represented.
You got it.
Yeah. So how does this impact, for example, KU County, which you serve on the legislature for?
Well, it impacts Cuyahoga County in a number of ways. The county receives a lot of different funding through federal and state government for programming and services to help our local residents. Low census response is going to equate to lower funding for our community for the next 10 years. So we're talking programs for seniors, programs for single moms, funding for
Daycare,
roads.
the hospital, roads,
Yes,
bridges, infrastructure.
yes, infrastructure, all of that.
And if you have a low count for Cuyahoga County, that means your vote is diluted when it comes to the state legislature. And right now we're posed to at least lose one, if not two members of Congress. That means that they don't just disappear. There's 435 of them. They'll shift somewhere else. Somebody will get that power.
Right, correct.
So who needs to participate?
Everybody needs to participate that was living in our community on April 1st of 2020.
How about if you're not a citizen?
That's fine. We want to count everybody. There's no citizenship question on the census.
And that was originally an issue back in January, or a year ago, let's say.
Correct.
So this information is confidential and private.
Yes.
So I was watching some old census, so I'm a C-SPAN junkie for Reel to Reel, and one of the tapes from 1940 said, I think it was 1940, what is said, it's not about what is said, not who said it. Mm-hmm. So it's about data.
Correct.
And there's only roughly 10 questions.
Yes. There's not a lot of information that is being collected. There's no income question, for instance, that comes through the American Community Survey. Some questions are on your race, your ethnicity, whether you're a homeowner or a renter. That type of data can be used to help look at our local picture around.
But more importantly, it's about who's in your household.
Correct.
Whether it's a student, an adult, a child,
Yes.
Somebody living with you.
Yeah, you want to count everybody that was in your household as of April 1st.
So we had hoped this would go until October, the end of October.
Yes.
The deadline is now what?
September 30th, next Wednesday.
So it was supposed to go to October. It is now in the courts. We cannot afford to wait for a judge to change or appeal things, correct?
We have to push on as if the deadline is the deadline.
So as we tape this on Thursday, you and I were at a meeting on Monday. Even our local census person, they're working on Navajo counts now, which I think is just interesting in itself, that why are they not concentrating on Cuyahoga County in this area, but they have basically, as of Friday, they can only do Navajo work till the end till next week. So we're on our own.
Yes.
So how can people take part? So if you don't have the internet, because right now everyone was mailed letters in March and April. If you didn't do that, if you still have it at home, you can still mail it.
Sure.
It has to be postmarked. But for most people, whether you're a student or just a normal citizen out there, internet is the way to go. And we're going to pop up from time to time. There's a 2020census.gov, or there's a 844 number that you can call.
Yeah.
That's all on the signs. You can do it that way and just get on and register that way.
Yes, you can respond online. This is the first time that's ever happened. We do have a lot of response happening countywide through the internet.
But in doing this, if you don't have internet, and we'll get into why people may not, you can go to the city clerk, you can go to your town or village clerks, you can go to your schools. They're all interested in a better count. So they will help you do that between now and Wednesday?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of caseworkers at the nonprofits that have worked directly with their clients to do mobile response. They can definitely do it through the schools. The schools have been very active in promoting this to the parents.
And most school districts have hotspots at their schools.
Yes.
So if you have an iPhone, and you want to do it that way,
sure,
and you have good glasses, because that would be in my case, you can do it that way. So, but it is important, as long as you do it before midnight on Wednesday the 30th.
Yes, yes.
So how, in your view, is Cuyahoga County doing?
Cuyahoga County is doing okay. We could be doing better, and we need to get the word out in the rural areas, and we need to connect to the hard-to-count populations, and we need to get into the west end of the city and get those numbers up as well.
So let's take it by slices.
Sure.
The city is doing fairly well. We were talking on here, when I looked last, the city was beating the county just by a couple percentage points. No competition, Mayor and Chairwoman, but in the city, there is a slice, and I'm going to just give a broad slice. They're done by census tract. So it's roughly from State Street to the city line, includes Orchard, Washington Street, those areas. They have a very low, they're a real low they're almost 16 points lower.
Yes.
Is that because they don't have internet connections, they distrust government, they haven't been found, enumerators haven't found them, or is it a combination of all of the above?
I think it's probably a combination. I mean, that's one of the poor tracts in the city, so there's a high concentration of poverty. That population tends to be more transient, so they move around a lot. Even if internet is accessible, they may not have the device needed to access it.
And our original plan was to have libraries help. So
Yeah.
Seymour Library had dedicated Lisa Carr over there had dedicated a computer, was trained her staff, and then
Right.
COVID hit.
Yes, yes. And part of the original plan was to actually purchase some digital devices to distribute to individuals to be able to make those important, census calls. But that wasn't able to happen either.
So where are our holes in the county?
Well, you mentioned quite a few of them already.
Oh yeah, I name names.
The rural areas, Sterling, Cato, Ledyard, Scipio, Niles, those rural towns.
So I was going to say, those are largely in the north and the south, and there's a different issue the county legislature has been dealing with for years now in those towns, and that's internet connections.
It is.
It's still, in some cases, it's dial-up.
Yeah.
And while we all like to hear the joke about the AOL sound, or you got mail, that is a problem.
It's a huge problem. I mean, we have a Legislator Ripley, who just gave his resignation, who literally had to leave his house and go to a different area to be able to dial in to legislative meetings. He had no connectivity where he lives down there in Summerhill.
So internet is one issue, but there is a second issue, and it's complicated. I want to kind of summarize it. Let's deal with second homes.
Yep.
Important. So there is an issue of second homes that people may not be familiar with.
Yes, and I would say this applies not only to second homes, but to vacant rental units for income owners
Okay.
of income property as well. So we want to count every property that's in the county, even if it's a seasonal home, it's a second home. If you're not residing there on April 1st, we still, if it's not your primary residence, we still want you to respond for that address and mark 0 in there, because that will still count the unit, and that will help in some formulas to drive funding.
And is that the same with apartments as well?
It is. So I found that out personally because I have a duplex, and the upper unit is vacant currently, and we did our census, and we had an enumerator knock on our door.
So again, people can go to 2020 census.gov,
Yeah.
you can click. It's not the easiest system to use on occasion, but you can get the forms there.
Definitely.
And if you haven't done that, that will increase the numbers as well.
Yeah.
So I know that, I thought I heard nationally, and maybe you might be aware of this, the goal is 99%, and I heard we're only at 90. Is that what you're hearing as well?
I haven't heard those numbers, Guy, honestly.
Okay, because my question would be, if you're at 90, why are you cutting it off a month and ahead? But we'll move on.
The cutoff is definitely a challenge.
A challenge, okay.
Yeah.
So just historically, because we both love history, in 1790 it was less than 4 million people, and it took 18 months.
Right.
And in this case, we're talking about more than 300 million people, and we're doing it from, let's just say, March
Right.
to September.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right overlaid over the COVID pandemic. So there are, let's get to the local level. There's some local efforts. There's a complete count committee for Cuyahoga County. What is that?
Well, the Complete Count Committee formed pre-COVID, and it was open to anybody in the community. You as chair encouraged people to participate, and the idea behind the Complete Count was to come up with strategies community-wide that would get the word out and get the count up for the census.
And I don't want to necessarily name names in this case because they're all doing great things. It includes school districts, a lot of not-for-profits, a lot of housing agencies,
Yep,
governments, libraries, just interested citizens.
Definitely.
Tim Donovan, I would point, I will name names. I'll name his name. Individuals who just know the importance of this, and groups like the Human Services Coalition, the United Way, and things like that. So they're all members, and anybody could have attended these meetings originally. They could attend them in the end, but they had to do it by Zoom.
Right.
Which is very helpful. And, so what is their goal?
Well, the goal is to get the word out to the public that the census is safe and the census is important, and to get the count up as high as we possibly can to make sure that everybody in Cuyahoga County is counted.
So originally there was some funding that was allocated pre-pandemic by Albany, correct?
Yes.
How much was going to come to Cuyahoga County?
About $120,000 originally. That got cut in half.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
And it also delayed, the applications really were submitted in the last month.
August.
To send.
Yeah.
Well, that is to spend this money, correct?
Yeah.
So the amount right now is roughly how much?
61,000.
And what is that money being used for, besides if you see blue signs all around?
Yeah, it's being used for a variety of things. We're doing a digital media campaign in partnership with a citizen and Amplified Digital. So that'll be going across YouTube, Facebook, smart TVs, various media platforms. We're partnering with the Finger Lakes Radio.
So on just that alone, do you think, because you and I have looked at the numbers literally every day, do you think, and the digital campaign started in the last week or so,
yeah.
Do you think that's driving us up our numbers by 0.1, 0.2, 0.3
I
at a
have
time?
no doubt that that's having an impact on our numbers.
Okay. Just because people
The
in their social
signs
media.
are out. Things are really starting to roll now with implementation of our plan. The community partners have been doing outreach all along, but now we're elevating those efforts with these grant funds.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted you. The radio station?
Yeah, radio
So Finger Lakes doing
station.
what?
Finger Lakes Radio, they're promoting, we have a unified message from the mayor and the chair about the importance of counting everyone.
Chair of the county legislature, we should say.
Chair of the county legislature.
So and there are also, and of course, you and I did not bring what you are giving out, but
Yeah.
there are personal protection equipment that's also been purchased. It doesn't have census logos because there wasn't time.
Correct.
But that's being distributed
Yes.
around the county?
We've got a few large events that we're planning over the weekend. These will be distribution events for children's and adults face masks
So
and
like the
sanitizer.
Cato Fair, there's
Yeah.
the electronics.
We won't
Just
be
one.
at the electronics. We looked at that event and thought that the majority of people that go to that event sign
If
up
they're
for
thinking
that
they're going to
event.
get rid of their equipment, they most likely are
it's
digitally.
an online sign up.
Okay.
They probably have responded.
And one of the things the committee wanted to do, am I correct on this, wanted to buy locally?
Yes, very important to support our local businesses right now during the time of COVID. So we have been able to purchase some PPE locally.
So not that I want to shift around it too far from census, but if you're driving one way, you see the sign this way. But if you
Yeah.
drive the other way up your street, you see 211 Lifeline. Can you I know we're going to have Karen Macy or
Yeah.
the United Way on in about 2 weeks. Can you tell us what this is about and why it's on the sign?
Well, this is on the sign. 211 is a crisis response hotline that's available to all community residents. And anybody that needs help can call 211 and access really vital resources that are funded through federal funds and through state funds. So tying this to the census response, we need a high census response to get the funding into this community to fund services that are supported through Lifeline and accessible through the 211
But there's no
Lifeline.
specific link to census, but this was a good way to get the word out
Yeah.
and people to use the hotline.
Yes, we're really trying to push the message. We want people to call 211 if they need help for anything: housing, mental health, substance abuse resources, food, transportation. 211 database has all of our resources locally in it, and the people that are answering the phone at 211 are trained crisis counselors that are familiar with our resources.
So you come from a different perspective. Obviously, you're a member of the county legislature now, but I've known you for at least 25 years or something like that. You were 2 at the time. No, I don't know. But you have spent a large part of your time either in government working for planning offices or at not-for-profits. You were at Cuyahoga Seneca Community Action Agency for
Yes.
a while. How important to those, so whether it's a planning perspective or a human services perspective, is this and this?
They're both really critical. The funding is really critical, so that's tied to the census response. The 211 lifeline is also important. Agencies have really struggled during COVID to keep track of changes among the partner agencies and programming and hours of operation and contact numbers even. Some people are, direct service providers are giving out cell phones these days versus the agency numbers. So having, promoting 211 and having it be used in this community will really help to streamline service delivery and access to services for our residents and referrals to services from the nonprofits in our community.
So we are in a time of COVID. I know Kathleen Cuddy was here 2 weeks ago, I think, or last week, time flies, last week, to talk about that. How has COVID impacted, as far as you're concerned, this whole issue of the census?
Well, it's definitely creating challenges for sure.
But is it across the country, or is it just here?
It's across the country, I would say. I mean, everybody, the whole country is being impacted by COVID. New York State, fortunately, is in a position right now where our numbers are low, where we're not necessarily where we want them to be, but compared to other states across the country, you know, we're not doing too bad. But definitely a concern for the national count.
So I asked this because I was looking at the website the other day, and I looked at the top 5 states, and I don't know if you looked at it, but of course the top one is one that has always been known for the enormous amount of federal aid, some might say pork, that goes to the state of West Virginia. And they are the top responder. And I look at that state, having driven through it on occasion. It's a largely rural area, but they're doing it. Mm-hmm. New York City and urban areas, because they do have connectivity, are doing well. But if you look at surrounding counties, Onondaga County is doing pretty well. But you look to the west of us in Wayne and Seneca, again, connectivity challenges.
Right.
That's an issue.
It certainly is an issue, not just for the census, but for access to education, access to employment.
Transportation.
Yeah. Poor internet connection is really creating a divide between our residents.
The other issue that we've talked about generally, and there's just this natural distrust, and maybe it's magnified this year because there's an election in 40-something days. There is this general distrust of government, mm-hmm. and that they're prying. Mm-hmm. But the Founding Fathers figured this out in 1790, well, when they adopted the Constitution before that, but in 1790, this is not about government intrusion.
Right.
This is about data.
This is about data. This is about assessing the community, looking at where we are. It's a snapshot in time of the community and the country. The historian Ruth Bradley wrote an article about the census and the history. The first census had, I think, a handful of questions. Are you male? Are you female? Are you free? Or are you a slave? It's an interesting.
And if you were a slave, how did you fill it out?
Exactly.
From that.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to do it this weekend on C-SPAN. That they on Reel to Reel. They were showing the advertisement campaigns from 1940 on, and I just was interested in it. Huh. But I look at some of the, so we do have this other census that occurs in off years. It's not part of this right now, but it used to be every 10 years there were 80 questions.
Yeah, the American Community Survey is a filler that goes out to certain segments of the population.
So we're talking about really 10 questions right now. Just
simple form.
Fill it out.
Yep, exactly.
I want to ask you about 2 other areas before we wrap up. One is there are a number of other community initiatives out there right now that you've been promoting. One is Bunks Across America, a community build, which is this weekend.
Yes.
So what is it, first of all?
So this is an event organized by a new nonprofit in our community called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. It's a national nonprofit that has a local chapter. Quite simply, they build beds for kids that don't have them.
And they're down at Finger Lakes Mall. It just happened to be the other day I walked by and they were working on beds there.
Yes.
So this weekend, is it both Saturday and Sunday?
It's Saturday from 10 to 2 is my understanding. And they're looking for volunteers to help build these beds. And what will end up happening is they'll partner with households in the community that have needs, and we'll bring those beds in and literally build them on site
So anybody
the
can go
families.
volunteer down there?
Yeah, there's a sign-up process, though. Go to the Sleep in Heavenly Peace Auburn chapter website to see that.
Now I know it feels like it's 900 degrees in the studio right now, but Christmas is around. In the holidays, you are also promoting Warm the Children.
Yes, Warm the Children. Every year, this program provides coats for kids in the community, and it's a partnership between the Rotary, the Citizen, and CAP Community Action. Their canisters are going to be coin canisters for donations.
And where are they?
They're going to be hitting the stores October 1st, so keep a lookout for those canisters.
So next week,
Yep.
fill out your census and look for the canisters.
Exactly.
You're county legislator, so I'm not going to let you off the hook here on a couple of quick things. Where is the county in looking at a possible county administrator? Justin Woods has been gone a year.
Yep.
Where is the county in that process?
We're moving forward. There is a committee that is being established. They'll be meeting, I think, the beginning of October, to start looking at how to move forward with this.
So that to me sounds like there will not, before the budget is adopted for 2020, which is usually in December, a new person or a process having been agreed to.
Well, the process potentially, I mean, realistically, like anybody that you would have in that position, there's likely going to be a transition period for them as well. So, yeah, but there's definitely things we can do to move it forward.
So we got 3 viewer questions on that's why it's on the list. So, so the first one is, who's doing those tasks that Mr. Woods was doing before?
Well, our chair is essentially the administrator for the county.
So
at
getting
this
extra
point.
compensation for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the legislature agreed to, so was the increase in compensation, this was the question, was the increase in compensation agreed to, I think, last month for COVID-19 work or for county administrator work?
I voted on that. When I voted on it, I looked at it as compensation for county administration.
Okay, so, and you
Yes.
voted positively or negatively?
I did vote for it.
And it did pass?
It did. It did. You know, when I started in January, that was one of the goals that I had, was to look at, you know, filling that position and getting an administrator on board for the county. And I think we all wanted to do that. But with COVID, the whole process has been disrupted.
So I want to end on the census. Can you make the case for, you can look out that way to that camera, straight ahead or wherever, make the case for why should people, if they have not, if they're in that 38% range, why do they need to fill out the census by Wednesday, the 30th?
By Wednesday, fill out the census. It's vitally important for our community, for our future, for the youth in this county. We want to bring money into this community to do a lot of different projects and to make sure that we have the representation that we need to bring policy changes and funding into this community, so that we can support our businesses and residents.
And back to my old films, one of the census films repeated a line from Lincoln. It said, what better to do to judge is with the census, and also how to do it. And so this is helpful from a planning perspective as we look out past 2022, past 2025, into 2030.
Definitely.
Our guest has been Cuyahoga County Legislator TRICIA KERR. We'd like to thank you for your time today. Continue the good works as to get the census out there.
Thank you.
We do want to remind you, you have until next Wednesday, September 30th. Do not count on the courts to give you an extension of time. It is important to Cuyahoga County, the City of Auburn, and Central New York to get our fair share of funds from Washington and Albany, and also to make sure that we are fairly represented after we do redistricting in 2022. And who knows, even the county legislature might do redistricting. We didn't even get into that particular area if they decide to go away from their current weighted voting system. On Tuesday, we will be back with City Manager Jeff Dugert for a city update. And on Thursday, Cuyahoga Community College President Brian Durant will be here to talk about how the semester is going, how they are responding to COVID-19, and new testing protocols that are being implemented here on campus. In the coming weeks, we will also hear about the Cuyahoga County United Ways 2020 campaign and the 211 system. We also plan to have Senators James Seward and Assemblyman Gary D. Finch, both who are not seeking re-election, to come in and talk about their years of service in this community. Starting the week of October 13th, we are starting a series of candidate forums for the offices covering Cuyahoga County. At this point, all the candidates for the New York State Legislature who have been invited, including those for the open seat for the 51st Senate seat being vacated by Senator Seward, the 50th Senate seat open due to the resignation of first-term Senator Robert Antonacci, the 126th Assembly District being opened up by the retirement of Assemblyman Gary D. Finch, and the 130th Assembly District, now held by Assemblyman Brian McLeod, have all agreed to appear in our forums. We are working on setting a date for the 54th Senate District, which is now held by incumbent Senator Pamela Helming. Unfortunately, Congressman John Kanko told us last night that his office that he has declined again the invitation to come to the college, but his Democratic opponent Dana Balter has agreed. We are waiting for a response from Working Families Party candidate Steve Williams. If Mr. Williams does not agree to participate as per our longstanding rules since the election of Senator Valesky against then Senator Hoffman, we will give Ms. Balter a one-on-one interview here for an hour. I'll moderate that discussion, but for the forums, I'll moderate, and the questions will be asked by Citizen Executive Editor Jeremy Boyer. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your ideas for questions or thoughts for guests. You can send them to Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page at COZGUYTHO@AOL.com or 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York 13021. If they're for the candidates, well, we'll pass them on to Mr. Boyer. Otherwise, we're talking about Inside Government Beyond the Front Page. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We want to thank you for watching, and we hope you be safe. We hope you have a good night, have a great tomorrow, and we will see you back in the studio on Tuesday with City Manager Jeff Diger.